Thank you for that kind introduction, and for all of you for sticking with us through day 3 of the conference, and most importantly, to His Excellency Hassan. Thank you for joining.
Call me Hassan, please.
Yes.
Just keep it that.
I've noticed everyone calls you Hassan. You're well known. Seems like you're well liked, and I can imagine so after shepherding through, of all things, the World Cup. So we were speaking backstage. I said you're following sessions on Afghanistan, on hostage crises, on the former Pentagon chief, the acting Secretary of Defense, Chris Miller. Now we get to talk about
The serious stuff.
the serious stuff, right? This is a topic that I'm glad I get to speak to you about, because it's part of my own personal history and my own background. Before I was a journalist, I actually worked for a coalition of organizations in the United States that worked on cultural exchange. And you've described the World Cup as the greatest cultural event in the world, and as a big cultural exchange moment. That is a part of security, of global security, and it's a part that a lot of maybe the folks in this room aren't a party to, or our audiences may not pay attention to as much. We're Defense One. We cover the Pentagon. We cover the military, which is, elsewhere in this country. So tell us about the World Cup as a moment for Qatar, for the region, how it relates and fits in as a peg in this toolbox of security. What has changed, and give us your after-action report.
Wow. Very loaded question. There's a lot
there. I'll come back to all those points.
Let me then kind of break it down first in terms of the success of the tournament, and maybe take us back a little bit in terms of what makes me very proud about it is that 13 years ago, when we came and bid for the World Cup, we had we approached it in a very unique way. We recognized the importance of this tournament. We recognized the transformative power this tournament has in the region, for the country, and potentially beyond it as well. And we took upon ourselves a promise. We approached it in a very unique, innovative way. And we made promises that we will host the most successful tournament, both on the pitch and beyond the pitch. After 13 years of diligent work, we were able to deliver on, or execute with operational excellence what is, I think, safe to say, the best tournament. I would like to say the best sporting event in history, but I will be a bit more humble and say the best World Cup in history. In terms of, if we look at 2 particular promises that we made that would contribute on the pitch and beyond the pitch. For example, the concept of the Compact World Cup and the impact it would have on players being able to be located in one place and then being able to focus on the pitch. You saw that translating in terms of the most goals scored in any football tournament, some of the most exciting football matches in any World Cup tournament. The fact that you had during the group of 16 and beyond, representatives of all confederations being present, hadn't happened before. And of course, what I'd like to think is probably the greatest final period of any sporting event. That, I think, the compact nature of the World Cup contributed directly to it. But also in terms of fan experience, fans being able to watch more than one match a day. That concept of being able to, that once-in-a-lifetime experience of being able to watch up to 4 matches a day, and some people actually did watch, every single match in the World Cup. I don't know if this would be repeated ever again, but it's definitely a very unique experience, and in speaking to a lot of fans, a very life-changing experience. Because apart from them being able to attend it, it was a very close bonding experience to some of the people that we spoke to when they had family members being able to go and attend all these different matches. It was a very strong bonding moment between family members, fathers and children, and so on. But what the Compact World Cup offered as well, which goes towards the point that you mentioned, is the fact that it was 28 days in a compact nature. It meant that it was football festivity, every nation represented, every nation celebrating its culture in 28 days. Now, most other tournaments, when this happens, they're usually spread out. And if you go, for example, in the latest tournaments, you'd go to a city, in certain areas, there's a center of gravity where people celebrate. Once you go beyond that, it's more or less life as normal, business as usual. Over here, that wasn't the case. Over here, in every corner, you found the Mexicans, you found the Senegalese, you found the Ghanaians, you found the Argentinians, the Saudis, the Tunisians. Everybody was celebrating their culture. And it was truly a global festivity. In a way that I think speaks volumes about the power of football, speaks volumes about what this platform is able to do in terms of bringing people from different backgrounds together. and creating opportunities of unified celebration without the fear and concern that people had before about, the cynical concern about security or so on. It really, people walked out of the stadium. They walked into the stadium, let's say, as opponents. They walked out celebrating, regardless of who was ribbing who or who was making fun of who. And that talks volumes and speaks volumes towards the power of this platform, the power of sports, the power of cultural event. When you have this human-to-human interaction, when you have this human-to-human bonding, when you have these little moments, I've seen videos and clips of, for example, Mexicans surprised at some of the local food that we have, which had, they tried mahiawa, which is a fish-based dish, that there were similarities between that dish and some of the Mexican dishes that they had back home. These little things build points of contact that do wonders towards, I think, a lot of what the discussions are over here, towards kind of breaking down stereotypes, towards humanizing the other, towards allowing for people to kind of appreciate a person from a different background. And potentially these are seeds, I think, that we all need to nurture more and more and build on more and more.
You've said that before, that your hope was that the event would help break down stereotypes of the region, of Islamic countries, of Qatar. Did that happen? What's your feeling on the backside of the event?
No, on the backside of the event, I mean, we've done a survey. I believe, the survey that we've done, about, I think 96% of the people that we've interviewed actually wanted to come back to Qatar and wanted to come back to the region. It really did dispel a lot of the concerns that people had. I mean, when people were coming in, there was trepidation. There was concern about what exactly can I or cannot do in this country. What can I cannot do amongst the Arab world. But with the celebration that happened, the celebration that occurred, more importantly, again, it wasn't just Qatar. It was the Arab world. We always said this was an Arab tournament first and foremost. And the fact that the Arab world was able to come together and really showcase the best in us, the sense of hospitality, the sense of celebration, the sense of festivities that we were able to put forward, I think it broke down a lot of stereotypes. And in particular, dare I say it, I think it was much more a celebration of the Global South. It was probably the most inclusive tournament out there today. If you look at, for example, the attendance when it came to, in the stadiums, representations of the African nations. A lot of the African nations have very strong representation. People from Senegal, people from Ghana, people from Cameroon were actually in the stadium supporting their teams. If you looked at it in terms of Arab, we had 4 Arab teams: Qatar, Tunisia, Morocco, and Saudi.
Great run.
All 4 teams, when they were playing in the stadiums, they were playing on home ground. They were not playing they had that home representation, to the extent that Morocco reached the semifinals. I think it was Luis Enrique who said when his players were taking the penalties against Spain, they actually felt the pressure. And most of these people weren't Tunisian fans. They were Arab fans supporting their home team. There was a sense of Arab unity. There was a sense of Arab ownership that you felt. A sense of Arab pride that came out of the first Arab tournament and Arab World Cup, and a sense of welcoming, that the Arab world opened their arms and welcomed the rest of the world over here. And again, if you saw that, when over the last few months when I was traveling, and especially talking to a lot of Arabs who were living outside, the Arab diaspora, a lot of them felt also, represented through this tournament. And I think what it did is it showcased an Arab nation's ability to host a tournament at the highest level, again, executing operational excellence at the highest level, but at the same time doing it in a safe and secure manner, people from different walks of life and different backgrounds being able to come celebrate together, not separating them, not putting on barricades and having that concern and fear that, that a lot of the cynics were always building upon before the tournament came. People were worried about, you have all these different fans coming into one particular area. How are you going to maneuver them? And it was coming out of, a position of cynicism when we were saying these are football fans who are going to come to celebrate. They're going to celebrate their culture. They're going to engage and they're going to make friends. They're going to walk away with a very positive feeling to it. And that's exactly what ended up happening. So I think there was a sense of pride from the Arab diaspora as well in the Arab world, and a sense of ownership that they had as well.
Listening to you talk, it's hard to think anything but that this event and that sport itself is political. That everything about this had political undertones, and as you talked about, it's about It's about coming together, it's about diplomacy, it's cultural understanding, it's safety.
You want to define it as politics. I won't define it as politics. I'll define it as celebration of humanity.
I'm a journalist who covers politics,
of course.
who covers defense, so I know, and I'm an American journalist, so that was my lens, and I know it on the World Cup. And so, and I'm a sporting fan. So alongside the wonderful success on the pitch, and I know to say pitch even as an American.
I'm impressed.
I'm also seeing we saw the reports of migrant workers and human rights, and during the event on LGBTQ, Israelis outside the stadium, there were all sorts of sprinklings of different political issues surrounding this moment. So you, as being in the center of it, what are your thoughts on sport as politics? Is sport itself a political cause?
Look, I think it's going to be a difficult question to answer very clearly. But I'll give you, my take on it, having been involved in this for the last 13 years. And again, taking the approach that we've, as a state of Qatar, taken towards this tournament. One, if you look at the role that Qatar has played over the years, right? We recognize our role, our very serious role and responsibility towards the global community. And more importantly, the need, and we've always adhered to the principle of resolving conflict through dialogue and looking at every platform and every opportunity to try to resolve conflict through dialogue. Very, very important. But to also go towards that, when we looked at these sporting events and when we looked at major sporting events, we always saw them as platforms to bring people together in adherence with that principle of resolving conflict through dialogue. We understand the power of sporting events. We understand the power of participating in sports. We understand the power of being in a stadium, and you've got a person from a different ethnicity and a different background behind you, but you're all celebrating the same team. And when the team scores, you get up and you have that hug and you have that camaraderie that comes out of it, and that little spark that it creates, that little bond that it creates, that you can potentially make a lifelong friendship, or have a positive memory and a very warm memory of that little moment. We recognize that. We recognize also, as an event, the transformative power that it has, both for the country, that allowed us to build our infrastructure with a long-term goal, and at the same time utilize, the reforms that were needed, the reforms that we wanted to do, accelerate that. So extracting the most out of that event, both internally and externally. We also recognize that, it sheds a spotlight, and that spotlight also can be used as a positive tool from our side in terms of accelerating initiatives that we want to accelerate, but at the same time, the spotlight itself allows for people also to view who we are, to represent our values, to represent our positions, to represent our part of the world. And it's not just Qatar, again, it's the Arab world itself that gets represented, and the Middle East that gets represented. It's a powerful tool, and this is, I think in my personal opinion, the most powerful is the World Cup. But if you take that and extrapolate that from there, major events, generally speaking, cultural events, music, film, entertainment, they have a power to communicate to the rest of the world and the rest of the community in a very powerful way, in a way that actually remains or has a permanent effect or a profound effect on people. They can lead to opportunities of common understanding, opportunities of appreciating that there's differences, and we will always have differences. We won't necessarily always see eye to eye. But we have to find a way of coexisting. We have to find a way of respecting each other, appreciating the differences, discussing the differences if need be, in a very positive setting, with hopefully finding some sort of resolution. And if not, we're able to walk away with mutual respect, but agreeing that we can move forward in the same lane or move forward in the same direction. That's the power of the World Cup. That's the power of sports and everything else that you mentioned. Now, is that political? No, in the end, is that something that you consider political or not? Honestly, the last 13 years, I did everything I could to ignore that question. All we focused on was delivering. All we focused on was seeing that result on the ground, was seeing, every promise that we made and every step that we took.
But you knew politics was part of it. You just explained it to us.
No, but that's what I'm saying. It doesn't matter whether, again, for me, the point is...
But you wanted to mute the politics?
No, it's not about muting the politics. It's about delivering on the ground.
Yeah.
It's about delivering on the ground. What I care about is, again, when I find an Argentinian fan walking, hand in hand or celebrating with a Saudi fan after having lost to Saudi, right? That moment in time when you see that, it has a very powerful effect. When you have an Indian fan who's a passionate supporter of Brazil, Never in his life did he ever think that he would actually be sitting down watching Brazil play on the field, let alone in the World Cup. And you see that moment captured, I saw it on the clip, captured, him passionately supporting. It was a very powerful moment for him, right?
Yep.
These are the things that matter. Now, so for me, again, coming back to your question, I see results on the ground. We delivered on the results, and you see the profound impact it has. Now, whether that's politics or not, I'm not trying to avoid the question. I'm trying to say that for me is not what matters. What matters is the results and the consequences that come out. And this tournament, the first Arab World Cup, the first Middle Eastern tournament, represented the Arab world, and the Arab world embraced it in a way that I think, and again, the global South, generally speaking, the South Americans, the export of our culture to South America, the export of our culture to Africa, to Asia, in itself, I believe is a foundation that we need to build upon in a very positive way. And it goes towards the concept of prevention. It goes towards the concept of coexistence.
Well, I think I might already know the answer, but I was going to ask you about the topic of boycotts of these events, because before World Cup, again, back in the United States, before World Cup was the Beijing Winter Olympics, and there was a much louder cry by some political leaders that the United States and other Western countries should boycott the Beijing Olympics. There was much less of that when it came to Qatar, I think to speak credit to you and Qatar and how the World Cup came about. But now it's kind of coming back. For the next Olympics in Paris, there were cries out of Ukrainians saying that others should not take the field or the pitch or the court with Russian athletes, with Iranian athletes, with even Israeli athletes. What's your response to that?
Well, I can't give a response to that. I'll give my take to that. And that's a very important distinction, so
Sure.
very clear. Look, I think, in my personal opinion, sporting platforms, if utilized correctly, go a long way towards bringing people together. And again, bringing people together, and I'm talking where it matters the most, people to people, diplomacy, fans. I'm not talking about ideologies. I'm not talking about pushing forward propaganda. I'm talking about the engagement of fans between them. Yeah. The ability for fans to celebrate together, the ability for fans to oppose each other in supporting different teams, but nevertheless, when they walk out, get together and celebrate together. That is a very powerful, very, very powerful tool, especially in a day and age where I think the tools of divisiveness are much more prominent and have a much more widespread effect than the platforms that bring us together and the opportunities that bring us together. And this is, and again, I think, it's very easy to, spread a negative thought in this day and age, and for neighbors who've lived together for 30, 40 years to build walls amongst themselves today, than actually find an opportunity to sit across the table and have a very rational discussion on what makes us on the differences and how we can find a way of overcoming it. So my personal opinion, we do need sacred bastions, sacred places of bringing people together. And I think sporting events are those events. This is my personal opinion now,
Well, you can tell this was a very personal experience for you. You said 13 years. How has this changed you? How's this changed your view?
Well, I think we need to start with Noreen. She's known me since I was in high school, so I don't know how that's, I'll let you decide how that's changed me. Honestly, I don't know. I mean, I think, it's a difficult question to answer. I think I haven't even asked it of myself. But look, I mean, ultimately it comes back to, I think I've, over the years, in terms of appreciating what it takes to deliver. Appreciating what it takes to deliver. Appreciating the need for support mechanism. Appreciating the need of a very strong team to overcome the challenges that we faced over the last 13 years. And let me tell you, we faced a lot of challenges. In terms of hosting this event, I can assure you none of it was standard, none of it was normal. What was thrown at us, everything in the kitchen sink, but actually with the kitchen sink as well was thrown at us. from geopolitical issues to a pandemic, amongst many things that we've had to face. But it was the need to believe in a higher cause. This wasn't just a football tournament. Really was not just a football tournament. This was a transformative event. This was an opportunity for us, for our people, for Qatar, for the region, to showcase the best in us. And so, despite all the challenges that we faced, there was perseverance, and perseverance with dedication and passion that led us to, again, I say it with a lot of humility, but a lot of pride as well, to deliver the best tournament, both in terms of numbers, in terms of broadcasting view, in terms of fan experiences and fan engagement. They speak for themselves.
So you mentioned challenges. So as a newsman, I have to ask you to give us an update on the status of the migrant worker issue. You've given lots of interviews before and since the event about the number of deaths, and those numbers have been challenged or clarified. But looking forward, I'm more interested to know what might have changed, what policy changes, what protections, what international eyes are on this issue, what has changed as a result of this tournament and of that experience that the outside world may not know about that issue.
I'll speak again, just to be clear, I'll speak within my realm of responsibility, if you will, and it has to be very important to kind of create that distinction. So obviously, during, in the lead up to the tournament, within the Supreme Committee, we developed worker welfare standards. We contributed with the government in accelerating a lot of the labor reforms that were commended by many international organizations. What we did within the Supreme Committee, of course, we developed standards during the construction phase, and we also developed the standards, which is very unique, by the way, during the operational phase and during the delivery of the tournament itself. Whereby we performed a significant number of inspections and audits to ensure that people adhered to the labor standard, the worker welfare standards that we had. So it was a very unique experience in terms of construction phase and during operation phase. Now, what we've done with these standards and this experience, we've passed it on to the Ministry of Labor, with the hope for them to consider and look at what can be applied on a nationwide basis. Now, previously, in the lead up to the tournament, there was a number of initiatives that we undertook that the Ministry of Labor embraced and then spread nationwide. One of them being we had the worker welfare forums that the government then took and applied in terms of the joint workers committees that it mandates all the companies to have, representation of workers within these companies. And so right now, as I said, there's a number of different initiatives that we've had, and all our lessons learned has been transferred to the Ministry of Labor for them to consider it. And to look at what can be applied on a nationwide basis. But I think also our ambition doesn't just lie there. The experience that we've had and that we've gained is very unique. And I think as mentioned by many different international organizations as well as NGOs. And what we're looking to do and what we're very ambitious to do is also pass that knowledge onto other major sporting events. Actually, let me change that. Not major sporting events, major events. I think the experience that we've gained, particularly during the construction phase.
Such as, give us an example.
Look, considering, the way we've looked throughout the entire supply chain, from main contractors looking towards the entire supply chains to manpower companies, to creating a database, to ensuring, whether it's in terms of, the workers that are within our projects, in terms of their, their entire cycle is considered, from accommodation, ethical recruitment, ensuring that they didn't pay recruitment fees, ensuring that the medical checkups that we performed on them on an annual basis, ensuring that these medical records are transferable towards any of the other facilities that they go to through an electronic medical database and platform, unique of its kind within the region as well, amongst many other examples as well. So these lessons learned during the construction phase, the lessons that we learned in terms of applying it during the tournament itself, and how we were able to ensure that we had strict adherence to enforcement and at least audits, while at the same time ensuring that the projects continued. While whether it's during the construction phase, ensuring that the projects continued, while at the same time ensuring that during the tournament itself, that the operation ran smoothly, but ensuring that labor standards and our worker standards are met. That experience, I think, is invaluable. I think we've got, if we're looking in particular at football tournaments, we've got the 2024 Euros in Germany. We've got the 2026 World Cup coming up. between US, Canada, and Mexico. I think we have valuable lessons learned that we can pass on. And there's other major sporting events as well as other major events that we think we can share that experience.
I encourage the audience to, if you're interested in the issue, there's a lot of writing, there's a lot of research, there's been a lot of oversight into the issue. I encourage people to get past the initial Google headlines on this.
Thank you.
Because I think there was some erroneous reporting, there's some seemingly accurate reporting, but it's still being talked about. I think Carnegie Endowment has had items on this as recently as last month.
If you'll allow me also, what I'd urge people to do is to go on our website. We have, over the last 6 years, provided annual reports by independent auditors or third-party independent auditors of our inspections. We've had joint reports with one of the trade unions, Builder Woodworker International as well, joint inspections on our sites as well. So these reports are available on our websites, open, transparent. So as you read everything else, I think it's very important also to go to the source, which is us, and look at what we've also provided and published publicly over the last 6 years.
So Hassan, what comes next?
That's a very open-ended question.
I mean, you're still in the same role, right? I mean, what's your title again? This is the best title I love. The Supreme what?
I keep telling. I think I'm due for a rebranding. Do I have to say it?
Please.
Fair enough. It's the Secretary General for the Supreme Committee for Delivery and Legacy. It's a pretty grand title. But all it means is that I'm just the head of a very dedicated team, very professional team that we're able to deliver on, like I said, a historical event.
Will you continue in this same type of role? I mean, bringing large events to Qatar. Is this where your future lies?
It's a very loaded question. No. In all honesty, no. I think again, within the next year, kind of the role is going to change slightly from my side.
Okay.
But there, obviously we're working now on the legacy, on the next phase for the Supreme Committee, for a lot of the, again, we've gained unparalleled experience. Really, we've gained. I mean, the experience that we've had in terms of hosting the most successful tournament, in terms of welcoming 1.4 million guests into Qatar, in terms of managing probably one of the most ambitious volunteer programs out there, 20,000 volunteers, from different parts of the world. There's a lot of statistics that I can throw out there simply to say, and suffice it to say that the experiences that we've gained over here, and it wasn't just Qataris, it was people that have made Qatar their home, and people that have come from the outside as well to deliver on this tournament. There's a wealth of knowledge and a wealth of experience that we're looking definitely to build upon, and we're working towards that, for me personally. In terms of the country and the state, I mean, we're hosting the Asian Cup in 2024. We're hosting the Asian Games. Hosting major sporting events has always been part of our, overall development goals, because we've recognized the transformative power that the sporting event has, whether, like I said, within Qatar or outside, and that's going to continue, regardless.
World Cup, Asian
whether
Cup,
it's me,
Asian Games,
maybe the
Olympics.
Well, look, we've expressed our ambition and our desire to host the Olympics over many times in many years, and I think that's always going to remain. So yes, absolutely. Now, of course, I'm not responsible for it, so we're clear. It's not.
I was about to say, do you have it in you to make it all the way to the Olympics?
Who, me? No. You've got a team. You've got a very well dedicated team. Led by His Excellency Sheikh Juan, the Qatar Olympic Committee president, and they're very well dedicated and very well versed in that field. I'm looking now for the next part of my life, which I'm still, as I said, I'm developing what needs to be developed in terms of enhancing the legacy and the knowledge gained, and then after that we'll see what comes next.
We joked backstage, but I'm going to ask you.
No.
I'm going to ask you.
I know you're going to ask me, and I'm going to give you the response I gave you.
Is it Manchester United?
No, that's a private individual. He's, Sheikh Jassim is working on it. I think, again, he's expressed his passion for Manchester United, and I haven't had discussions with him, and I haven't talked to him about it, so the simple answer is no.
I should ask you, do you prefer Paris Saint-Germain or Manchester United?
You know the answer to that, Liverpool and Real Madrid. That's a simple answer to that.
That draws a smattering of applause.
I can see that. I mean, where's the Liverpool fans? I mean, the Real Madrid fans. There we go. All right, here we go. Yes, sir.
Well, I also wanted to ask you about the athletes themselves. You talked a lot about their cultural, aspects. While World Cup was going on, we had, the Brittany Griner case for Americans of an athlete being held, you could say as a hostage in Russia during World Cup. Again, in a day, we were talking hostages on this stage 2 panels ago. But it brought up this notion of, the shorthand in the United States is shut up and play. The idea that athletes should just play their game, keep out of politics altogether. Even someone like that who was stopped on a border entry, wasn't arguably had nothing to do with politics other than agreeing to go play in Russia. Being on the outside of events or having an event that's a cultural moment, or people in the street that are able to, say things or protest. What about the athletes themselves? Are they how do you view them as, deliverers of this message that you're talking about of cultural change and understanding?
I think first and foremost, I view them as normal human beings. You have to look at it from that perspective first and foremost. They're normal human beings who have their opinions and their thoughts. More importantly, though, yes, they might have decided to go into a career of let's say, being in the spotlight. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're obligated or required to use that platform. This is my personal opinion. It is a personal choice for them. Like it's a personal choice for everybody sitting in this audience, a personal choice for all of us to go out and speak about these matters. These things are, like I said, a personal decision. The moment an athlete decides to make it, to use the platform, I think it's very important for them to be well-versed, well-educated, well-informed about the stances that they take, and then to use the platform as they see fit. It's no different to a politician, it's no different to a businessman, it's no different to any public, to an actor or a musician. I think, again, it's a very personal matter. That's got to be the athlete's decision, what they want to do and what they want to say.
I'm trying to think of what I was asking next. You have spent time, you grew up in England, but you were from Sheffield?
Well, I went to university in Sheffield.
University of Sheffield, that's right. So having that experience, you could say on both sides, from there and from here, I've heard in some of your previous interviews talk about the event as, as a chance to break through, frankly, old school Orientalism. Elitism, even racism, and you mentioned that this was a moment for the global South. Talk about, also, since the event itself, the reactions that you've heard from both sides, from back in England, from the sporting community there.
No, look, everybody that's come and attended the tournament had nothing but great things to say about it. Whether they experienced it as...
Well, not everybody. There were some critics of some aspects.
There were some critics of... Fair enough. Maybe I was being very kind of grandiose and saying everybody. But the reality was... No, actually, no. Let me change that. I'll stick to it. Everybody that I spoke to... Everybody that I spoke to had nothing but great things to say. Maybe because they were speaking to me or not, that's a different matter. But, from people that have gone to tournaments and matches and attended, and I think actually David spoke to somebody as well that attended, that was very avid, was it a Glasgow fan or Aberdeen fan? From Scotland. That, every weekend would go with his son, and they were avid football fans. And the experience that they gained over here, not only just attending more than one match a day, but the exposure that they had to the Arabic culture was a life-changing experience for him. It brought to perspective, or at least it widened his horizons to a whole different culture that he'd never come across before. And it was a life-changing experience in the sense that it made him want to explore it more. That was one simple example of an individual. The moment that His Highness put the bish, the Arab cloak, on Messi. Now, there are some people that criticized it and said, this is, what are you doing? This is unacceptable. When I went through the media scrum afterwards, every single South American / Spanish or Latin journalist was asking, what did that mean? There was a sense of pride, a sense of curiosity. What exactly does that mean? Does that mean Messi today is royalty? What exactly does that mean? And when they understood the significance of what happened, they embraced it. They embraced it to the extent that people in South America, in particular Argentina, began to understand what the bish means to us. It's a simple cloak, but it means a lot to us. And there was an export of part of our culture in that moment that I think a lot of it will live in, at the very least, in Argentinian history, for generations to come, and spread wide, beyond that as well. There were powerful moments of that cultural engagement.
Because that moment in the British press, the American press, was received quite differently.
But that's what I'm saying. Again, it was the people that let's say the people that the global South, but in particular the Argentinians, that moment meant a lot to. The moment of Messi picking up the World Cup, that they've been waiting. They had the song saying they've been waiting for generations. That very powerful personal moment for them, they embraced that moment, and that's what I'm trying to say. What the World Cup here showcases is that we're a globe. We're the earth. We're many different tribes. And I think, if you ever looked at the opening ceremony, it kind of tried to capture that. We come from many different tribes. We come from many different backgrounds. We come from many different belief systems. Everybody has a very strong sense of ownership and pride in their own belief system. To impose it on somebody else and to say, I'm right and you're wrong, you'll never move forward. We have to find a way of appreciating, of understanding, and celebrating together these different moments that create these bonds. That's the message that we've been trying to deliver, from day one. And I think the Global South embraced it. And the people that attended from all parts of the world, regardless whether you're part of the Global South or the Global North, the people that attended here, you saw there was one of the famous clips of an American fan on TikTok saying, guys, I came here, I'm here for 3 or 4 days, come. If you're gonna don't listen to anything else that you see, come and experience it for yourself, make your own decision. That's what we always said, come experience it for yourself. And I have to say, from everything that I've seen, everything that I've followed, everybody that I've spoken to, when they came and experienced it for themselves over here, they walked away with a different impression. And more importantly, they walked away with relationships and bonds and experiences that embraced our culture and left a very strong, powerful imprint upon them. And it happened the other way as well, by the way.
Yeah.
The Arab world here, from all the fans in that engagement, walked away with a sense of pride. I have to say it, again, without exception, every person that I spoke to, especially in the Arab diaspora, felt a sense of ownership. This was their tournament and felt a sense of pride about what we all collectively were able to deliver. And more importantly, not only just deliver in terms of operational excellence, but the welcoming nature of what we were able to show the world, and the part of our culture that not everybody gets to see on a daily basis and was embraced. That was a very profound and powerful moment for us as well.
What you're describing came up, I believe yesterday. The U.S. ambassador to Qatar said how, there's definitely a lack of understanding in the United States about Qatar. I think it was Ali Velshi who said probably 10 out of 10 Americans have some sort of misunderstanding or don't know the significance, especially to the way that the audience here does. And I talk a lot, and I write a lot about between many nations, especially bilateral relations, despite the politics, military and intelligence and security professionals have a whole nother level of partnerships that there's a lot more history to it. They're closer, they exercise with each other, they visit each other. Can you talk, we have just in 2 minutes left, about your partnership with security agencies to help pull off a safe World Cup, and maybe any lessons learned, or how is that continuing, as you said, in your advice to former large events?
Oh, absolutely. Look, I think the safety and security of this tournament and everybody that came in was delivered at the highest level. In a way I think that bar none. I mean, the simple statistic that came out, people might have found it funny, but it's very profound and very telling, that there was not a single arrest from any English fans. It was the first time, I think, in any tournament, or at the very least in any World Cup, that no English fan got arrested. Now that goes, that's a testimonial towards the fans and towards the environment that we created, but it's also a testimonial towards, the approach that the security team took towards ensuring that everybody feels safe, everybody feels secure, and able to celebrate. Now again, when we approached this tournament and the lead up to it, the amount of questions that people asked us about how are you going to ensure that there's no fights that are going to happen between fans, it's a small enclosed area, riots are going to happen, problems are going to happen, hooligans are going to happen. Again, first and foremost, we always said the security teams had very strong relationships with many of the security agencies globally, in particular, for example, within the FBI, within some of the security forces, I know that the New York, New York Police Department as well, NYPD, there was a very strong relationship with them as well, amongst other security entities. And one of the aspects was prevention, first and foremost, identifying troublemakers, ensuring these troublemakers don't come. And then over here, ensuring that as we move along, as you see events potentially maybe escalating, how to manage it, how to diffuse it in the best of ways, and then how to make sure that people are still able to go and have fun without the feeling of overwhelming security presence. And that led, like I said, I mean, Argentina walked out of that match with the Saudis, singing that song, "Where is Messi, where is Messi?" which became a crying call for a lot of the underdogs whenever they defeated, I think, if I'm not mistaken, the Tunisians started singing, "Where's Mbappe?" when they beat France, and so on and so forth. It became a calling, a song of victory for a lot of the underdogs. The fact that you had fans coming out singing that, and yet nevertheless, and then after that, the Argentinians, when Saudi got kicked out, the Argentinians coming out and saying, "Where's Saudi, where's Saudi, where's Saudi?" And they still were able to celebrate together. It speaks volumes about the ability from our perspective of creating a safe environment where people are able to celebrate, rib each other, make fun of each other, and yet nevertheless, tensions don't rise. And I have to commend the work that was done. There's definitely a lot of lessons learned. We've had discussions with a number of future hosts as well who want to learn and want to kind of have a discussion in terms of our particular experience and how can that be applied within their own events as well.
Well, there you go. And if you want to get his lessons learned, maybe you can catch him on the way off the stage. But Your Excellency, that's our time. Thank you for joining us and for walking us through a good memory of I think we all agree, a great World Cup that we'll always remember.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Appreciate it.
everyone.
Thank you.